Today is March 25th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It's a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today we are going to be finishing up Pioneer number 6, Jim's story, pages 244 through 245, and beginning Pioneer number 7 story, The Man Who Mastered Fear, pages 246 and 247. We're also going to be continuing our journey through step 10. We're just about ready to wrap that step up in the 12 and 12. So good stuff today. And, with all that, my friends, hope you're doing well this morning. Life is good. We woke up today. We're living one day at a time anyway. We've been given a new set of 24 hours. What are we going to do with it? I'd like to go ahead and read the big book a little bit. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right. So guys, if you remember from yesterday, finally, it seems like all these stories, it takes a little while. Things get pretty darn dark before the dawn, but finally we're starting to see the dawn here. Starting to see a ray of hope as Jim's sponsor has shown up. His name is Charlie, and he's shown up to help Jim. And we talked yesterday about what are the odds of this. He's trying to stay sober. He can't. He does all these odd jobs, finally does an odd job for friend, just a random job for $2-3 just for whiskey money. That's what he calls it. And lo and behold, somebody happens to be there at his friend's house as Jim's repairing this outlet. It's this lady named Ella G. Ella, she's wise enough to know, okay, I'm not going to preach to this guy or anything like that. I'm not even going to talk about his alcoholism. How's Vi doing? Jim's wife. And calls Jim up the next day. And once again, she's very vague, deliberately vague, and says, hey, I've got a friend who wants to see you for a business deal. Jim, he goes, okay, what's this all about? Charlie comes up. And at first, Jim's like, what are you telling me all this for? Why are you telling me all your problems? I've got my own problems. But then, sure enough, one recurring thing we're seeing here, as soon as that sponsor starts to talk about alcoholism and the malady, the person that they're talking to starts to go, wait a minute. This guy thinks about alcohol like I do. And then finally on the last paragraph it says, after Charlie had talked a while, I knew that this man had something. In that short period, he built within me something that I had long since lost, which was hope. That's it. So we're going to go ahead and finish off Jim's story here, and then we will jump into the next story. Page 244, we're going to read 244 and 245 of this story. The following Sunday, we met at Ella G's. It was Charlie and 3 or 4 others. That was the first meeting of a colored group in AA, so far as I know. We held some 2 or 3 meetings at Ella's house, and from there we held some 2 or 3 at her mother's home. Then Charlie or someone in the group suggested that we try to get a place in a church or a hall to hold meetings. I approached several ministers, and all of them thought that it was a very good idea, but they never relinquished any space. So finally, I went to the YMCA, and they graciously permitted us to use a room at $2 a night. At that time, we had our meetings on Friday nights. Of course, it wasn't very much of a meeting in the beginning. Most of the time, it was just Vi and myself. But finally, we got 1 or 2 to come in and stick. And from there, of course, we started to grow. I haven't mentioned it, but Charlie, my sponsor, was white. And when we got our group started, we got help from other white groups in Washington. They came, many of them, and stuck by us and told us how to hold the meetings. They taught us a great deal about the 12-step work too. Indeed, without their aid, we couldn't possibly have gone on. They saved us endless time and lost motion. And not only that, but they gave us financial help. Even when we were paying that $2 a night, they often paid it for us because our collection was so small. At this time, I wasn't working. Vi was taking care of me, and I was devoting all my time to the building of that group. I worked at that alone for 6 months. I just gathered up this and that alcoholic because, in the back of my mind, I wanted to save all the world. I had found this new something, and I wanted to give it to everyone who had a problem. We didn't save the world, but we did manage to help some individuals. That is my story of what AA has done for me. All right. Beautiful ending once again of Jim's story here. And I love it. A friend of mine, a very close friend of mine in the fellowships, he says, God, please help me help one. Instead of getting wrapped up in all the numbers, trying to save the world and being overzealous, let's just focus on the one. Instead of focusing on the rest of our lives, let's just focus on today. Let's not drink today. What are we going to do with this 24 hours once again? All right, moving over to Pioneer number 7, The Man Who Mastered Fear. Pretty interesting title here. Fear was one of the problems that I really wrestle with. It says he spent 18 years in running away and then found he didn't have to run. So he started AA in Detroit. So we're going to begin this story on pages 246 and also read 247. For 18 years, from the time I was 21, fear governed my life. By the time I was 30, I had found that alcohol dissolved fear. For a little while. In the end, I had 2 problems instead of 1, fear and alcohol. I came from a good family. I believe the sociologists would call it upper middle class. By the time I was 21, I had 6 years of life in foreign countries, spoke 3 languages fluently, and attended college for 2 years. A low ebb in the family fortunes necessitated my going to work when I was 20. I entered the business world with every confidence that success lay ahead of me. I've been brought up to believe this, and I had shown during my teens considerable enterprise and imagination about earning money. To the best of my recollection, I was completely free from any abnormal fears. Vacations from school and from work spelled travel to me, and I traveled with gusto. During my first year out of college, I had endless dates and went to countless dances, balls, and dinner parties. But suddenly, this all changed. I underwent a shattering nervous breakdown. 3 months in bed. 3 more months being up and around the house for brief periods and in the bed for the rest of the time. Visits from friends that lasted over 15 minutes exhausted me. A complete checkup at one of the best hospitals revealed nothing. I heard for the first time an expression that I was to grow to loathe. There is nothing organically wrong. Psychiatry might have helped, but psychiatrists had not penetrated the Middle West. Spring came. I went for my first walk. Half a block from the house. I tried to turn the corner. Fear froze me in my tracks, but the instant I turned back toward home, this paralyzing fear left me. This was the beginning of an unending series of such experiences. I told our family doctor, an understanding man who gave hours of his time trying to help me, about this experience. He told me that it was imperative that I walk around the entire block, cost me what it might in mental agony. I carried out his instructions. When I reached a point directly back of our house, where I could have cut through a friend's garden, I was almost overpowered by the desire to get home. But I made the whole journey. Probably only a few readers of this story will be able, from personal experiences of their own, to understand the exhilaration and sense of accomplishment I felt after finishing this seemingly simple assignment. The details of the long road back to something resembling normal living, the first short streetcar ride, the purchase of a used bike, which enabled me to widen the narrow horizon of life, the first trip downtown, I will not dwell on. I got an easy part-time job selling printing for a small neighborhood printer. This widened the scope of my activities. A year later, I was able to buy a Model T Roadster and take a better job with Downtown Printer. From this job and the next one with yet another printer, I was courteously dismissed. I simply did not have the pep to do hard, cold turkey selling. I switched to real estate brokerage and property management work. Almost simultaneously, I discovered that cocktails in the late afternoon and highballs in the evening relieved many tensions of the day. This happy combination of pleasant work and alcohol lasted for 5 years. Of course, the latter ultimately killed the former. But of this, more anon. All right, so that wraps up today's reading in the Big Book. We'll come back to it in just a minute. All right, my friends. So if you recall from yesterday's reading, we are still on our way through step 10, which is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And yesterday we talked about courtesy, kindness, justice, and love being the keynotes by which we may come into harmony with practically everybody. There it is right there. Courtesy, kindness, justice, and love. And then yesterday we talked also about how pain is one of the greatest teachers we could ever have, and how we learn these lessons and make this inventory at the end of the day. So today we are going to be reading just the first 2 paragraphs of page 94. As we glance down the negative side of today's ledger, we should carefully examine our motives in each thought or act that appears to be wrong. In most cases, our motives won't be hard to see and understand. When prideful, angry, jealous, anxious, or fearful, we acted accordingly, and that was that. Here, we only need recognize that we did act or think badly. Try to visualize how we might have done better, and resolve with God's help to carry these lessons over into tomorrow, making, of course, any amends still neglected. But in other instances, only the closest scrutiny will reveal what our true motives were. There are cases where our ancient enemy, rationalization, has stepped in and has justified conduct which was really wrong. The temptation here is to imagine that we had good motives and reasons when we really didn't. All right, so we will stop there out of the 12 and 12. I love the step-by-step directions here. It's so simple and practical and to the point. Now, I can only share my experience here, but I wrestled, and still can, wrestle with self-hatred and self-loathing. It's still self-centeredness because I'm only thinking of myself, but that's something I really wrestle with. So sometimes when I would do my inventory at the end of the day, or when I did my first couple 4th steps, I would look at all the things I had done, and I would be so ashamed. And instead of saying I did a bad thing, I would say I'm a bad person. I would personalize everything. Instead of saying I failed at this area, I would say I'm a failure. Look, here's the evidence right in front of me. But I don't think that's constructive at all. What I've learned is, or just what page 94 says, at the end of the day, we need only recognize that we did act or think badly, try to visualize how we might have done better, resolve with God's help to carry these lessons over into tomorrow, and making, of course, any amends still neglected. I don't see any sentence that says, and continue to beat yourself up. As a matter of fact, in the big book on page 86, it says, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? Here it is. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. Why? For that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. You know what I get from that? Do your due diligence. Make that inventory. See where you messed up. Ask for forgiveness. Ask what you can learn from this experience. Make those amends if you need to. And get right back on the horse and quit beating yourself up. Because if I'm so self-centered, in a negative sense, that, oh, Rob, you suck, you're a failure, you did this, you did that. Am I useful to anybody else? Absolutely not. I'm still being self-centered. My friends, I have no idea how much to express how much this passage helped me and continues to help me. I just get right back on the horse. Life's too short to beat yourself up. It does nothing to help. Nothing. So we get right back at it and we try it again. It's as simple as that. And going back to our man of fear, again, he's struggling with some mental health here. And there really was no psychiatry in his area to help him with these irrational fears that he's experiencing. So he starts to diagnose the medicine of alcohol. And I put medicine in air quotes here. So far, it's working out. Until, as he said at the very beginning, a little foreshadowing for his story, until he had two problems: fear and alcohol. So it works for a little while, but eventually it turns on him, just like it does for so many of us. And then going back to Jim's story, wrapping up that story today, it's just another beautiful picture of how the first African-American group, or at least one of the first, had ever been formed, and how everybody worked together to make sure that it continued to thrive. It's a beautiful message. And once again, Jim was a pioneer of AA that's put in this book because he never drank again. It's amazing how similar some of these stories are, and also different, but the ending is usually the same. And again, it's just another miracle. Speaking of miracles, if you're sober today, you're one too. The people who love you are very proud of you. And I just urge that we all just keep on keeping on. Just concentrating on the 24 hours ahead. That next paragraph, we consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Well, I hope we'll use our brains today. Hope you all have a great day today. As always, I don't speak on behalf of AA, NA, Al-Anon, any sect like that. I am just a grateful friend in recovery. That's it. And I am so grateful that you've chosen to join me in this lifeboat of recovery today. Hope you all have a good one, and I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.